Can you see it now?
Yes.
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 Okay, let's start. In today's session, we're going to review some popular agile metrics and also would have a brief introduction to evidence-based management. Okay, but first of all, I'd like to thanks to all the organizers of the event for this amazing opportunity to participate and to deliver my presentations. A few words about myself. So I'm a co-founder and faculty director at Flex Growth Group. We provide some high quality trainings and workshops on agile, innovation and process improvement related topics. So I have more than 8 years of experience in technology sector and various certifications in Scrum and Safe and more. Okay, so yeah, as I said, today we're going to cover Scrum metrics, Kanban metrics, Lean metrics, and we will talk about evidence-based management. All right. So, but first of all, we need to review and ask some important questions. So, what makes for a powerful metric in an agile environment? Well, first of all, we need to understand that a metric should be a simple one, right? So, because if it's too complex and complicated to understand, well, it has no sense to implement and use this metric in our environment. Now, the metric should be used in tandem with other metrics, right? So, because usually we have some complex environment we work with, so and we need to, to identify and cover different aspects of our environment. So that's why we need to use many metrics, right? Not just one metric. After that, the metric should be a part of a specific experiment because in this case, if there's no specific purpose to use this metric, it's useless. Now, after that, the metric should be surrounded by conversation, which means that we need to review the results, right? We need to review our measurements, and after that, we need to have a conversation about that, right? So, what could be improved? Where is the weak sides, etc., right? And the last but not least is that the metric should be used by the team, which means that if the team says, okay, we don't need this metric, or we have a metric that is never been reviewed or something like that, well, in this case, it's also useless to use these kind of metrics. Okay, right. Now let's review some popular Scrum metrics. Okay, so the first one is the Burndown Chart, right? The Burndown Chart represents the amount of story points delivered, and we say burned, right, during the sprint, right? So in this example, we can see that we have a sprint of 2 weeks, and we have 107 points for the team to be delivered during the sprint. So when we can see that the first 4 days we were at 107 points, and after that, the amount of points dropped down to the 99, and then to 87, and so on. So, and what we can see at the end of the sprint, that the amount of the points decreased drastically from 59 to 11. Well, why is that? It's because usually, the team tends to have these tasks to be closed and put to done by the end of the sprint. So most likely, in the majority of the team, you could see, this picture. So like, the amount of points drop at the end of the sprint. Okay. Any questions about the Burndown chart? Okay.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just want to say there are more people waiting in the lobby. If you can
Oh,
let them in.
yeah. Just one moment.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can continue here. Right. Okay. So the next one,
Yeah, hi.
yeah, tell me.
The basic question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, regarding the burndown chart only. So generally, what happens like the stories are completed and they are being reviewed by the PO in the sprint review meeting and the demo, and then the stories are closed. So generally, the tendency are that most of the story points are burned on the last day. So now we see that some of the stories points we have burned. So is this something that we can review them a bit early with the PO as and when they are completed, and then close those stories?
Well, in
I
fact,
mean, what should be the ideal way or we should practice?
okay, so in case we have some stories left behind that are not being done, all right, so these stories usually are put back to the product backlog, and after that, product owner decides what to do with these stories. But of course, these stories are not included in the sprint review.
So here in the burn down, I mean, because we are consuming the points, let's say day by day or maybe 2 days, 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
fine. So it's because the proper burndown will come when you complete the story and it is signed off by the PO. Then only you can mark that status as closed. But generally, like what I have observed in normal way is that we show all the stories to the product owner and other stakeholders in the sprint review meeting, and they once they approve that as per definition of done, then we close all the stories in one go. But from the burn down chart perspective, it shows that all the stories, most of the stories are closed on the last day only. So is this the right way of doing, or
Well, in fact, I couldn't say, that this is a right approach, right? But it could happen. But here, the most important point is to communicate to the product owner. Okay, so in this case, let's say 19th of September, the team closed, or talked to the product owner. So in case they talk to the product owner on 19th of September saying, okay, we're going to close all these, the whole bunch of story points and put it to done. So they need basically to review all these story points, all these user stories with the product owner, and the product owner should say, okay, so I agree, we could close all of these story points, and we are done, right? So there's no problem. But if the product owner considers that some of these story points and some of these user stories are not done, well, there's no way the team could close these stories, okay, and the story points as well. So, and most likely, let's imagine that 11 story points that left here, the product owner just said, okay, but these story points, and the user stories that contains these story points, so I can't accept it. That's why they left. Okay, so the communication is key here.
thank you.
Okay. All right. The next one is the velocity chart, right? So here, the velocity chart represents the velocity of the team. So basically, the amount of story points delivered by sprint, right? So here we have sprints, and here we have the amount of story points. Now we can see that the first sprint, the team delivered 10 points, the second 15, the third 25, right? So then it was a drop on the fourth sprint to approximately 18 points, and after that, on the fifth sprint, the team delivered 30 points and continued with the same pace up to the sixth sprint. Okay, so this is something expected, right? Because if a brand new team starts working on a new product, right? So the first sprint can't be, at a full speed. So they need some time to improve their velocity, improving their practices, working with the product owner, scrum master. So in order to be able to achieve their maximum velocity, in this case, this velocity is represented by 30 points. Okay, so we could use this velocity chart to analyze, what's going on the release level, for example, right? If any improvement is needed. Okay. Any question on the velocity chart?
Avnish here. Just a comment. I would say that velocity chart is to estimate. It's being used for forecast and trying to understand, uh, like to predict the amount of work the team can get done in future sprints. This should not be used to for any sort of comparing teams or something like that, which
Right,
is
right.
something could be very sensitive, because that is not the purpose of doing this. This is just to forecast and predict the amount of work that can be done in future sprints. That's it. Nothing related to any performance or anything.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Because in fact, this is a bad idea to compare the team, various teams based on velocity, right? Because velocity is an internal metric, right? So that is used, as you said, for to predict how much work could be done during the next sprint, but not to compare. This team is better than that. Team A is better than Team B based on its velocity. It's completely wrong, because this metric is not representative of the amount of work, of the complexity of work the team is doing. So that's it. That's right. Thanks for your comment. Okay, now let's review some Kanban metrics. Okay, now first of all, and the most popular is the cumulative flow diagram, right? So here let's review this table, right? This table basically represents a Kanban board. Okay, so in this Kanban board we have various columns. So the first one is to do, then development in progress, then testing, and the last one is done. Okay, so and here we have, yeah.
Is that the number of items and the number of days?
Right. Here is the date, right? And here is the number of items. This is not, let's say, these are not story points, but a total number of the items, right? So let's say user stories. Okay. So these are not story points, but this is just an amount of items that a team is going to work on during the sprint. Okay, so these are 10 items. Okay, so we can see that there's a progress during the sprint, and we can visualize this progress like that, right? So in the cumulative flow diagram. So reviewing this cumulative flow diagram, we could have a quick grasp on what's going on and easily identify if there's a bottleneck within the team or with some of the items, right? So and we can see that at the end of the sprint, the amount of work that is done, right? And we have some work in testing, some work in development progress, and some of the items left in to do. Okay, so but for example, if by the end of the sprint we would have some increase, or maybe the amount of to do is higher than we expect, we need to understand why is that. So why no work had been done on the on some of the items, etc. Okay, any question on this one?
Just a quick question here.
Yeah.
Does the cumulative flow diagram have to be that all the items have to be completed, or can there be some things that can be in the other phases as well?
Yeah, in fact, as you can see here, by the end of the sprint, we don't have the complete amount of the backlog items completed, right? So we have some items that sit in to do, so we need to, to go ahead and talk to the team to understand why do we have, some items in this state, right? So no one touched it during the sprint. Why is that? Maybe the team was overloaded with work, right, with some high priority things, or maybe something that appeared suddenly without some clash that the team had. So we just need to understand. That's why I said it's relatively easy to to review this chart and this diagram and see what's the current state of the team regarding to the flow. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Right. Now let's review some lean metrics. Okay. The most important metrics in lean, if we're talking about a development team, is well, lead time, one of the most important, right? And then we have cycle time and reaction time. So lead time represents the amount of time that's passed from the task was created until the work was completed. Okay, so and the cycle time represents the amount of time from work that was started, right? So some work was started on the item until the work was completed, and the amount of time from the task created to work started on this item is called reaction time. Okay, so basically the important thing is to see how the team could improve its lead time, right? But to be more granular, you could take a look into cycle time and reaction time, right? So the same, related to the previous question on this cumulative flow diagram, right? So we can see that some amount of the items left in to-do column. So we need to understand why was that, right? So because maybe for some of the items the cycle time was too long, right? Or maybe the reaction time was too long. So we need to understand why was that, and to see if we can improve it somehow. Okay, so maybe there was a delay due to some high priority issues that entered in the middle of the sprint and so on. So we need to understand that in order to be able to improve our lead and cycle time. Okay, so in the reaction time, if we're talking about some operational teams like support team, etc., well, the reaction time is really important because usually these teams have their SLA, like service level agreement, established, right? So they have some established time to respond, and in case this reaction time is longer than expected, so some work needs to be done on the team to understand why was that. Okay, any question on these metrics?
Yes, I have a question. In terms of in Scrum, a task may be created as just as part of a backlog item. So therefore, when it goes into a sprint, the actual task time plus the work completed would be potentially longer than in reality.
Well, in fact, we need to understand. Where should we apply these metrics, right? So, as you said, that a product backlog item could be created and it could sit for a long time in the product backlog. Okay. So, but most likely, if we're talking about the sprint, right? So, most likely we're talking about the sprint backlog, right? And in this case, there is a commitment from the part of the team to work on all the items selected during the sprint planning, right? So we need to understand why the task created, was too long in to-do list, right? So why no one picked this item to work on, Okay, so we need to to talk to the team to understand what happened.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay. Now, the last topic to cover that I have today is the evidence-based management. So what is the evidence-based management? So this is basically an empirical approach, and the idea behind this approach is that we can experiment and measure the results, right, in order to be able to improve customer outcomes, our organizational capabilities, and business results. All right, so let's see some of the concepts that evidence-based management has. Let's take a look at this picture. Okay, so here we have our north, let's say, okay, which is a strategic goal. So what are the strategic goals? So the strategic goals are the goals that are ideal goals for our organization, right? So this is the, let's say, the final point we'd like to achieve, right, as an organization. So, but how can we move towards the strategic goal? Because it's too far away, so we need to elaborate a plan to be able to, to start with some steps towards this goal. Okay, so most likely we would like to have an intermediate goal, right? So intermediate goal, well, it's not too far away, but it requires, a certain amount of work and a certain amount of effort from the organization to go there, right? Okay, so, and what else do we have? So how can we reach the intermediate goal? Okay, to do that, we need to have some immediate tactical goals. Okay, and immediate tactical goals is something that is based on the experiment loop. So each immediate tactical goal would represent a an experiment loop. So, and this experiment loop is this. So first of all, we need to establish a hypothesis. Okay, so it could be any idea. We'd like to see if we can prove it's true or it's false, or and see what the results that we're going to get testing this hypothesis. Now we conduct our experiment, right, and after that we measure our results, right? So we measure lag and lead results to see what happened. Was it something were we able to achieve something that was expected by establishing this hypothesis or not, right? So we do some inspection, right, to capture lessons learned. Okay, and once we have our lessons learned, we adapt. Okay, so we make some adjustments to our hypothesis or whatever it is, or maybe we just say, okay, so we will drop this hypothesis and go ahead with a new one to see if it helps us to improve. Okay, and doing this, we're going from our starting state, and starting state represents the initial point where the organization is comparing to the strategic goal, right? And running the experiments, we go step by step to achieve our intermediate goal. Okay? Any questions about this scheme?
Yeah, just wondering the time. Is it? If you say immediate tactical goals, is it like in sprints? Are you measuring, or how is it?
Yeah. These immediate tactical goals is basically the goals that we set during the iteration. Okay, so and the iteration is the same as a sprint. Okay, so these are short iteration loops that we use to run our experiments and to measure our results. Yeah, that's
It could be like spikes or whatever.
Yeah, could be the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, any other question?
Have you got an example where this is actually how well this has worked in the workplace and the reaction you got from the team?
Well, in fact, an example could be, how the team. So if we are talking about the team, right? So an example could be how well we manage our sprint backlog. So the same, the same story as we talked about this. Let's say a lead and cycle time. So maybe some of these items, some of the items that were in the sprint backlog. Was sitting forever in the to-do state and so on. So we took a look, let's imagine that we took a look with the team, so what happened, and we said, okay, so we had a hypothesis, okay, so why that happened. And we have some, some things, some tools to improve, right? So maybe we need to set some work in progress limits, or we need to, to work more proactively with the product owner and so on. So this could represent our hypothesis. And what we do, we establish some improvement actions, and we work on these improvement actions during the next sprint, right? So imagine we were here, right, here in this state, and we said, okay, so let's introduce some WIP limits to our flow, and let's work more proactively with the product owner. Okay, so we did, and after that we saw that, the results that we obtained were much better than before. So basically our hypothesis was true. Okay, it was correct. So that's why we could keep implementing the same steps, and moving forward, running some additional experiments to cover some some other aspects of our work, for example.
Thank you for bringing it to life.
No problem. All right. Now,
I'm just curious, can the same concept be applied to strategic goals, or is this more for like sprint goals as well?
no, it could be some, objective key results. It could be anything, but in fact, objective key results. I can't say, it's completely related to strategic goals. But it's it's in some aspects more related to the strategic goals, but it could be anything on the organizational level, right? So management could take a look into something, right, and also run some experiment. The most important thing here is that we need to establish some short feedback loop for each experiment, right? Because if we're talking about the team developing a product, they work in sprints, and that's fine, right? But management could be, the concept of the sprint. Sometimes it's too complex for management to apply, and they need just to set some some time frame to see, okay, so let's say 1 week. Okay, so 1 week we do that. Could be anything related to improving relationships with our customers. So we could try, I don't know, launch a marketing campaign and see the results and measure the results, and let's see if our hypothesis, which could be a proposed some steps, some action plan, does it work or it doesn't work at all. Let's see. Okay, and so they could also implement this model at their work.
So you're saying that it could be more at a portfolio level, where you could find more results with regard to this model than at a sprint level, or say
I don't.
iteration level.
Okay, so well, I don't say that it's more effective at the portfolio level than at the team level, but I just say that it could be applied at both levels. So no problem to apply it at some high level. That's what I say.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Yury, I had a question here.
Yep.
So, in principle, obviously, this is great, but in reality, I don't know if others experience this. The way the empirical, or we can have confidence in this kind of experiment loop working, is we can keep everything else a constant and pick only um, one aspect that is going to be experimented with. But usually, at the end of the sprint cycle or per sprint cycle, there are a few things that you usually want to tweak. So even if we pick one item and then try and see how we perform against that for the next sprint, there is some other items that we want to look at as well. So that one sprint doesn't give us enough magnitude to identify whether it's a success or a failure. So you've got to repeat it over multiple sprints to actually empirically being able to monitor if it's working. So do you have tips for, in reality, how best, or other folks have any tips with regards to, in reality, how best to work with these kind of improvements to have confidence in something that's actually working?
Okay, well, in fact, I can't say that there's always only one aspect that the team should work on during the sprint. So usually these are multiple aspects, right? So as I said, that for example, right, at the team level, this is the let's say introducing work in progress limits and collaborate more proactively with the product owner. So these are two aspects already. Okay, so that's it. It could be more, it could be less, but the most important that it should work for the team. Okay, so I'd like to say that the amount of the aspects to work on is not that important than the outcomes we have, right? If the outcomes, let's say if we have only one aspect, right, and we are working on this aspect proactively during the sprint, and we got some good, really excellent outcomes, that's fantastic. So no problem with that. So I can't say that that the amount is crucial, but the most important is the work the team performs and how it improves. So it should be efficient more than the amount of the items we'd like to pick.
I can answer to that. We do A/B testing. We had to use a story on the experiment we'd like to do. The next sprint we deploy in prod. We reach a number of 1,000, and then we decide if we want to flip the feature toggle on and off. Most of the time we turn it off, and then we analyze the number in the third, the fourth sprint. Then we remove the code and measure it again. A lot of teams, what they do is they use Google Analytics if you're customer facing to accumulate your data. You don't have to do A/B testing, but you could push a feature and see the path that they take, if it corresponds to your hypothesis or not.
Yeah, A/B testing is a good example. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right. So along the way, as we saw on the previous slide, we need to understand that there are three parts that we should take into consideration, right? So the first one is our activities, so what we do, right, what our team does. Then we have the outputs, so this is our product, and then we have the outcomes, right, which is not equal to our outputs, right? So the outcomes represent the desirable things, that what customer would like to see using our product. So it's related directly to the customer satisfaction. Okay, so and the output is not every time meets these expectations. Okay, so evidence-based management introduce some key value areas, right? So we have two parts of this, right? So first part is the market value, and the second is the organizational capability, right? So market value is all about the current value our product has and unrealized value of our product. Okay, so we need to ask some questions. So what value is currently delivered by the organization? Okay, so Does our product meet the customer's expectations, or should we do something more about that, right? And do we have, some parts of the market we could expand to? Okay, so this is also very important because, most likely each product that you have has some unrealized value to be uncovered. And after that, we have some organizational related key value areas like time to market. So how long does it take to deliver new value? Okay, so and this is basically is all about how fast we deliver, right? It's all about our release management and so on. And after that, we have the last KVA is this ability to innovate. Okay, so how effective we are at improving value. Okay, so that's right. Let's review the metrics that compose each of these key value areas. So the current value, in fact, I'm going to highlight some most important of these metrics, right? So the most important are customer satisfaction and customer usage index, right? So, and in case the customer satisfaction, well, this is basically is about how our customers are satisfied with our product, right? So how happy our customers are with the product. Right, so if we have a low customer satisfaction rate, so there's something that we need to improve. Maybe we need to improve our communication with the customer, right? So, and that's why I said about short feedback loops. So we need to be able to, to deliver fast, but also get some feedback fast to be able to, to tweak our product in an appropriate manner. And after that, we have an interesting metric that is customer usage index. So what's it all about? It's all about, how frequently the delivered features are used by the customer. So because in the real world, there are situations when the product owner says, okay, we have some high priority feature to be delivered by the end of the sprint. Let's cancel some of the low priority items and, let's focus to deliver this particular item. And the team is like, okay, we do our best to deliver it, and by the end of the sprint it's been delivered, but during the next few sprints, looking at the customer usage index, we can see that that the feature is almost never being used. So that's the question. That's the question we could ask to the product owner. So you said that this is a high priority, a very important feature. So, but why it's never been used after we delivered that? So we need, to see what's going on here, right? And more internal metric could be that could be implemented within the team is the employee satisfaction. Okay, so to understand the engagement, how energetic and enthusiastic our employees are at the workplace, or maybe we need to to introduce some activities to improve the engagement, energy, etc. Okay, any questions about this current value KVA? Okay.
I couldn't understand the revenue per employee, how that fits into this particular.
It's more related to to the organizational level and how good So let's say we have let's say the most the most simple example would be we have a startup, we have 3 persons within the team working, and these persons are doing all the work, all the stuff, covering all the areas, wearing many hats at the time, performing some juggling at work. And then we see our gross revenue divided by number of employees. So we could see that, we're good or we're bad. And after that, so in a larger organization, the same. So we could see, the efficiency. In some cases, it could be used, to measure the efficiency. So let's say if we have, a huge team working on a small product, most likely, we could do anything, not anything, but something to improve this rate, right? Maybe we need to reassign some of the employees to work on a different project and so on.
Okay, so have you seen organizations that practically tie these 5 factors together and actively use them? Or is it more an aspiration?
Let's say the most commonly, the most popular metrics that are used are customer satisfaction and customer usage index. These are really popular. So the other metrics, it depends, because in my practice I usually worked with these two metrics, right? So like customer satisfaction and customer usage index, and those three. The rest of these metrics, in fact, as I said, I guess it's more practical in a startup, but my experience is more about large enterprise organizations and projects. That's why I can say so these metrics are too popular there.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right. So the next KVA is the unrealized value, and here we have the market share, right? So this is basically the relative percentage of the market that is not controlled by the product. So this was all about the question I asked, right? So, and any organization could ask. So do we have some new terrains for our expansion, right? For our further expansion. So this is it. This is all about that. So it's more, let's say, it's more applicable to some, to the product owner to see and to work with the management team. After that, we have 2 more metrics here, right? The first one is customer or user satisfaction gap and desired customer experience or satisfaction. So it's all about our product. And let's say the customer is expecting one thing, but our product has the feature the customers expect, but the feature is incomplete. It's partially delivered, or something like that, right? And they say, okay, for example, if we're talking about some web application to, I don't know, a hotel management application, right? So, and the customers would like to search by reservation number, but our search feature supports only searching by name. And they say, okay, well, we can search, it's okay, we're happy with that, but we'd like to, to be able to use our reservation number to perform a search. And that's where we have a gap, right? We have a gap to fill. So that's basically it. Okay. Any questions about this one? Okay.
I guess the customer or user satisfaction gap is quite hard because different demographics of users and customers have different sort of wishes and gaps and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's why it could really be complicated when you're working, or where you have, a product with international coverage. So you need to some regions, yes, have their own preferences, and other region would have different preferences. So yeah, so you would most likely would need to have a team of professionals to address all of this stuff in order to make the process efficient.
Thanks.
Okay. Now we have time to market, right? It's more about our internal organization metrics. So let's see the most important stuff here. Well, basically is the build and integration frequency and release frequency, because you see, the fact that we release fast doesn't mean that we are good. Why is that? Well, this situation could be, so let me talk about some particular examples. So imagine that our company delivers let's say 2 times per month. Okay, so and every time this is a new version of the product. So let's say version 10 10.1, and then you have 10.2 at the end of the month. Okay, so each 2 weeks the customers receive a new version of the product, and there could be a complaint from the customer's part, because they say, okay, we'd like to use the actual version of your product, but it's too complicated for us because we have a large infrastructure, and we need to manage it properly, and it's too complicated for us to upgrade and to manage the migration from one version to another. That's why in this case we need to understand how can we change our processes, and maybe it could be better to release just once a month, right? Instead of doing it each fortnight. Yeah. So, and this would help us to improve our relationships with the customers. Okay. So this is it. And build an integration frequency is all about how good our pipelines are, right? So sometimes we need to get into more details, especially if we have DevOps established and implemented within the organization. So we need to understand how good our CI, which is a continuous integration, and CD, continuous delivery pipeline, are. So we could also use this metric to our benefit. Okay. Any question on this time to market metrics?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do like the T to M, especially some of these feel more Kanban and sort of manufacturing metric, which I like. I'm wondering if there is metrics around sort of time to value, or time to sort of profit or margin or return generated, because I think that's sort of this last 10 feet that we seem to always be missing, is that we've sort of amplified acceleration, but not necessarily acceleration with a directional purpose, right? It's just get faster, and we just kind of jump around to get faster in all directions and hope that it sort of adds up. And I'm wondering if there's any metrics you've seen around sort of time to sort of value generated, or time to return on value, or client value, something that's really instrumented to that feedback loop between a client doing something valuable, which then they pay for, and then obviously that gets repatriated, and the organization can then pour more resources in because they obviously made more money on it, and et cetera.
That's right.
Does that make any sense? I know it's a broad. Sorry, it was like sort of a broad question I was sort of getting out, but
no, that's a good question. And here we return to what I said at the beginning of the presentation, right? What makes the metric powerful within the organization? So, and one of the aspects was that we should use a tandem of metrics. So no metric would work in a vacuum. So it's virtually impossible to have one metrics that one size fits all. It's absolutely impossible. So in this case we need to use a set of metrics, and how you choose the set of metrics depends on your organization. But in terms of the as you said, so it could be return on investment plus release frequency plus customer usage index plus customer satisfaction. And here you have a set of metrics. After that, you need to, to perform a thorough analysis to make a well-informed decision on what can be done, what process should we tweak to be able to, to be more efficient, to make our customers happier, and as the result, have more money. Okay, so there's no, there's no ready answer to that, but the answer is try to analyze the current situation and work on establishing a set of metrics that would help you to reach to the point. Okay.
If I can answer that, we use cost of delay formula. It's a relative business value from one feature compared to the other. And if you want to know how fast or which one should be used first, you could divide it using the weighted shortest job first. So WSGF and cost of delay. You search for it. It's a comparative of implementing one feature over the other. Because this tells you after the fact, once you implement it, what the impact. But if you need to make a decision beforehand, we get the business people together and we do the cost of delay.
Yeah, but in this case, as I said, it's let's say it won't be enough to have just one metric. Maybe it could be some really complicated metric. I agree, no problem with that. But having only one metric won't help you to to have the full picture of what's going on. So so different aspects should be attacked in this case, and it's absolutely impossible to achieve using just one metric. But yeah, so different metrics could be used. That's right. Okay, any other questions? All right.
Can you comment article something where we can see all the metrics, or is there a recording of this meeting?
Yes. I pasted the links at the end of the presentation, and I'm going to upload this presentation. So I guess the message about where you can find the link has been published to the Meetup website. So you can just download it from there. And here I'm going to jump here, right? So you have this evidence-based management guide, which contains all the metrics that you can use in your organization and the team.
Okay. Can you paste this link, just this link in the chat, please, if possible?
Yeah, one moment. Well, I think
I see the link. I see the link.
Yeah. Okay. So let's review the last one, right? So ability to innovate. So here, the most important metrics would be defect trends and technical depth, right? The most popular ones and the most important to take into consideration. Why? Because technical depth, if someone is not familiar with the concept, is that technical depth arises when you have you try to deliver fast, but you have some complex work to do. And so in terms of the code, right, you just you decide to use some impractical and or maybe a code based on bad practices in order to be able to deliver a particular user story or a particular functionality, feature, etc. Okay, but in the future it would cause some issues, especially if you have some dependencies with other applications, or or you should be able to integrate it with some internal pieces of functionality. It would be too hard, so the result would be a rework for the previous work plus the development of the new functionality, right? So this is something that should be avoided by all means. And here a good practice would be to use technical debt metrics to see how good we are as the team in terms of our technical debt. Do we have it at 0, or do we have a lot of a lot of stuff that is technical debt, etc. Right? And defect trends could help us to detect whether we have a technical debt, because defect trends basically is the amount of the defects that are found in our product. So this is something really important, and we need to take it into consideration. Okay, and innovation rate, as I said, reviewing these the key value areas it's all about how much we spend on new product capabilities, the amount of our effort, etc. Okay, right. So, any questions about the ability to innovate? Okay. Well, as I said, that's it. And here you have some links with interesting articles to read about, right? Read about metrics, read about evidence-based management approach. So yeah, any other questions you'd like to ask me about the presentation, or maybe telling about your situation within your organization? Have a talk. Go ahead.
Do you have any examples from any organization you work with realistic metrics, like to show a sample of these, connecting the dots almost?
Okay. Well, as I said, the most popular is the customer satisfaction, customer usage index, right? What else? What else? Release frequency also. So
no, I mean a live chart, like a live chart or a live data, or just to show the real usage.
Okay, no, unfortunately I don't have these examples due to our company policy, so I can't reveal this data. But basically, yes, as I said, you just need to try to experiment, to maybe if you struggle, finding some examples, search for some templates or something like that, and to see, or maybe the best advice here is to review your actual state, right? So your actual state your organization has, and see what are the metrics that are used. Well, I find it virtually impossible that no metrics has been used in the organization. So you need to review these metrics and to see if these metrics help you to find a perfect balance, improve your work and your product. So that would be my advice.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. Okay, guys, if there's no more questions, so I thank you all for attending this session, and have a nice day.
Sorry, Yury, can I ask one quick one? So this is mostly per team-based metrics, but what about, there's always, or usually we get requests from management for, one of the basic principles here, which you started with as well, is not to compare them between teams. These are more per team.
Yeah.
But what about metrics to try and collate across teams? Can Agile help support those? I mean, obviously you've covered the latter part of it about the general metrics, but can we use some of these team-based metrics to somehow contribute to its?
So you'd like to compare your teams based on some internal metrics, is that right?
Not really compare the teams, but from the management perspective, to be able to better predict the cross team delivery in some sense?
Well, in this case,
based on Agile.
Okay, yes, I got your point. In fact, here it's not only about metrics, but it's about how you manage dependencies between your teams. Okay, so you need to take a look into that first. So how effectively you manage the dependencies. So imagine that you have, well, if you have some interrelated products and different teams working on these products, and they have some dependencies, so one team waits for the other to in order to progress, to move forward with some of the features of their application, and they need to wait. Well, you need to work with the Scrum Master, you need to work with the Agile coach, you need to work on how they manage their dependencies. And after that, because, well, let's see. On the one hand, we have this, right? So how your teams manage dependencies. That's fine. On the other hand, we have, the metrics. So the question is, why are you asking this question? Most likely because you have low customer satisfaction rate, right? Because you're getting some comments, you're getting some complaints from the customer's part. Yeah. So they say, okay, we're not happy with your product, something is going on, so you need to fix. Okay, or maybe they say, okay, we asked you to provide some updates to some critical fixes, and they are not in place. Okay, so they're not in place. Why? Well, most likely because your teams doesn't manage the dependencies correctly. So, and you need to understand why is that. Okay. So, and it's not really metric based, but more, teamwork based, and how the dependencies are managed, and what is your internal flow to manage these dependencies. If you're good with that, so if you're good, analyzing this situation, and you need to work to find the best way to improve this aspect. And once this aspect is improved, most likely your customer satisfaction rate goes up.
Okay, thanks, Yury.
No problem. Right, guys, any other questions? Okay, if there's no more questions, so thanks everyone and have a nice day. Cheers. Bye bye.